Hello everyone, welcome back to Uncertain Release, and today I wanted to make a quick video. Quick because there's a lot of things that are already in the previous videos, especially about the X-T2, but today's video is going to be the X-H1, the Fujifilm X-H1 review. I've been using this camera for the last 3 months or so, and I've got my different opinions about it, and especially all the ins and outs, all my experiences I had with that camera, and if you should get it over the X-T2 or if you should get an X-T3 or if that's the perfect camera for you. So let's start with the actual reasons that pushed me to buy an X-H1 in the first place. And these reasons were pretty straightforward. I mean, they are all in the X-T2 after 1 year video I made about, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, something like that. I don't remember. And in that video I said that my two biggest complaints about the X-T2 were the fact that the grip was very shallow, and that meant that ergonomically it was not really working for me, especially when you put like big lenses on in the front. It works great with smaller lenses like that 35mm f2 for example, which is very light and stuff, but if you want to use something like this Viltrox 85mm f1.8, it doesn't work at all because the camera is too front heavy and I put too much I have to put more force into my fingers to keep it stable, and that puts like micro vibrations in the camera because of the muscles of my arm, and it doesn't work well if you are in low light situations and you need to use slower shutter speeds. That's definitely a problem. This reason, also, while I'm on the subject of micro vibration and stuff like that, the X-T2 doesn't have any image stabilization inside the camera, and since I'm mostly a prime lenses user, that means that a lot of lenses I was really enjoying, typically that Viltrox lens, I was not able to enjoy them anymore because once I reached lower light situation, I was not able to get sharp results, which was definitely upsetting a little bit. I found my my workarounds, like typically if I wanted to have a short telephoto for portrait lens and stuff like that, I would use the 56mm f1.4 instead, because it has much more light more light gathering abilities, so I was able to to have a faster shutter speed but the same amount of light on the sensor, and it was a shorter focal length and the lens was smaller, and etc. So there is definitely workarounds, but it was definitely not a perfect solution at all. And yeah, those 2 points are my really biggest complaints about the X-T2 as a whole. I'm not complaining about the image quality or the autofocus or the button layout or the EVF or whatever. To me, those are perfectly fine in the X-T2, just the camera's not perfect otherwise. And this is where the X-H1 really captured all the things that were wrong with the X-T2. The X-H1 basically fixed them. The lack of a good grip, well, as you can see, we now have a pretty deep grip with the correct grooves in the correct places, and it's a very comfortable camera to hold, and I don't have any problem using that camera at all. I really enjoy using the X-H1, and even more so if you use the grip, the vertical grip. It is much more substantial in the hand than the X-T2's vertical grip, which is pretty shallow as well. It just like adds a lot of height to the camera, but that's it. The X-H1 actually feels like a proper flagship camera in your hands when you put the grip underneath, and I made a few events and it was like a dream camera really. Previously, before the X-H1, my standard when it came to ergonomics, I talked about that camera a few times, but that was the D2H from Nikon. I'm saying the D2H, but it could be any flagship camera from Nikon, because the sheer height of the camera with the deep grip and stuff like that, that really puts the word ergonomic into a camera to use, and I really enjoy using that camera. And the X-H1 with the vertical grip definitely reminds me of the D2H, which is only a good thing. So ergonomically, I had no more problem with the X-H1, with the Fujifilm cameras in general. And yeah, the addition of image stabilization meant that I could use those lenses back again, which was definitely a huge bonus for me. Also, I could use my longer, like I have a 300mm f4.5 lens that is a Nikon mount, so it's an adapted lens and there's no image stabilization in that, so that was also becoming quite important to have stabilization if I didn't want to have a tripod with me, which I definitely don't have always a tripod with me. And yeah, overall, it's a wonderful upgrade over the X-T2, just ergonomically. Now, there's also a few things that the X-H1 is able to do, which I wasn't really expecting it to, but it definitely was something that I did not think that it would be that much of a feature, you know, but in the end it turned out to be pretty damn good for me. So one thing that the X-H1 particularly excels at is to be used as a DSLR. And when I'm saying this, I already see all the Fujifilm fanboys saying, oh, but you can't say that, it's not a DSLR setup or whatever, there is no PSAM dial. Yeah, there's no PSAM dial either on my Nikon cameras, but the thing here is that you have a front, like here you have a front, and a back command dial, so you have your front and back dial like on any other camera pretty much. And on the X-T2 you can't really control everything with that. You can assign the automatic position on the ISO dial to be a command instead of automatic, so you can now control the ISO with the front dial, and you can put your shutter speed dial to the T mode. If you do that, like the T mode like that, if you do that, the back command dial now becomes the, like it goes through the whole range of the shutter speed. All right, so you have ISO and shutter speed, but the problem on the X-T2 is, unless you have a lens that doesn't have an aperture ring like that 35, you can control the aperture with the front dial, right? You always have to use your second hand to move the dial, to move the aperture ring on the lens. And basically that means that if you want to have a one-handed operation, it's not possible unless you don't move your aperture around, which is when like one end of the exposure triangle is not really possible to not move your aperture sometimes. So it's definitely a problem. And on the X-H1 compared to the X-T2, now if you put the on lenses that have aperture rings, I mean, if you put the aperture ring on the A position, then now you can assign that A position, that automatic position, to be a command position, just like on the ISO dial on the X-T2, and you can also do that on the X-H1. So now you have the aperture on the front dial as well, and the ISO on the same dial, just you click it like that, and now it cycles between ISO and aperture, and you can do everything one-handed with it, and that's just nice to see. Sometimes in events you don't have the time to look at your camera and change your shutter speed like that, like a little hipster. I'm gonna get crucified for that, but by Fuji fanboys. But anyway, it's a nice way to operate a camera, don't get me wrong. On my free time when I'm doing my personal work, I like to do that, like very much. Otherwise I would have not bought an X-T1, I would have not bought an X-T2 or an X-H1 for that matter. But sometimes I want to go back to more, I would say, traditional DSLR approach, and the X-H1 is still able to do that, and that's a wonderful feature. Alright, next thing are all the things around video. The Fujifilm marketing, if I remember correctly, in 2018 when the X-H1 was released, was really pushing out the fact that the X-H1 was the first, you know, Fujifilm video-centric camera. And a lot of people noted that this was an error, like the camera was mismarketed because it was not a video-centric camera. But in the result of that marketing, you know, action towards video, it means that there is a lot of features that are added to the X-H1 compared to what the X-T2 had. even though the X-T2 has the same sensor and processor, the X-H1 has more features. Typically, all the settings are separated. Like on the X-T2, you know, in the classical Fuji way, you have your shadow tone, highlight tone, noise reduction, grain, stuff like that, and color. And with the X-T2, it's shared between all your color profiles. So you have your custom profiles, of course, but it's shared between video and photo. So when you switch from back and forth, if you're not shooting f-log, that is, you're gonna have a problem if you're gonna have to change them every time you switch to video. And in the X-H1 you don't have to do that. It's a separate bank, pretty much. Same goes for the autofocus continuous custom settings. On the X-T2 is shared. On the X-H1 there is another profile that you can set up for video, and when you go back to photo, it goes back to the photo autofocus profile, which is a time saver, pretty much. Also, there is now the ability to change your bitrate. The X-T2 is capped and locked at 100 megabits per second in 4K and 1080p as well. In the X-H1, in 4K we can go up to 200 megabits a second, so we have files that are twice as big, but you have less compression, so it depends on what you want, I guess. And you can also decrease the bitrate to 50 if you want to have smaller files, but with more compression. If that doesn't bother you, you can do that. And that's a nice feature to have, like, depending on what you're shooting and in which conditions. If you are traveling, maybe you want to only stay at 50. If you really are shooting a high quality project, maybe 200 is a good way to go. Or if you are just doing, like, I don't know, general video work, maybe 100 is sufficient, like it was on the X-T2. And I'm not saying that the X-T2 is not a good video camera, because it is, but on the X-H1 it gives you the ability to choose, and that's definitely something that is pretty nice. Also, I didn't really talk about the impact of image stabilization on the sensor in video, and that's definitely something that is noticeable if you're doing a handheld. The X-T2 is straight up not possible to do handheld with a lens that doesn't have image stabilization. If you do video with the X-T2, definitely pick a lens that has image stabilization, so that means pretty much a zoom lens in the Fuji lineup. With the X-H1 you can use pretty much whatever lens you want, and it will have basically the same level of stabilization than the X-T2 with a zoom lens with image stabilization. So that's pretty nice to have that, like, more versatility in your lens choice, but it's not like a game changer. It's not going to be a gimbal like IBIS like you're gonna see in an Olympus camera, for example. It's not up to that level. It's pretty okay, but it's pretty jerky as well. Like, sometimes if you want to do pano shots and stuff like that, it's going to be a bit jerky. Like, it wants to stay on the image, and then it, like, understands that you want to do a pano, and it, like, catches up with the video, and it's not really super great. So that's one of the downside of the IBIS system in the X-H1, I would say. But everything else, the only downside of the X-H1 compared to the X-T2 to me is the fact that the camera is substantially larger. I have a wider camera, thicker camera with a big grip. Not only the body itself is thicker, but the EVF goes much further back to give you more space for your nose and stuff like that. So it's more practical when you are using the camera, but if you want to pack it out on a small bag or something, it might not be as practical as the X-T2 is. And this is one of the reasons, you know, I kept the X-T2, and also one of the reasons I bought the X-H1 is that I was able to keep the X-T2 as a small compact camera for street photography or family stuff or stuff like that, where you don't want to have a camera that is too conspicuous, yeah, sometimes having a smaller camera is nice, and the X-T2 is perfect for that. So, you know, when it comes to value, I don't want this video to drag out for too long, but when it comes to value, the X-H1 is actually pretty okay. I thought that the price was very, very, very high compared to what the camera is able to do when I was looking for it maybe 6-7 months ago. but since then, like in January, the price dropped considerably. I don't know from where it came from, but the X-H1 camera bodies were going for about 800, 850, and at that price, I can't recommend the X-H1 compared to a more advanced Fujifilm camera like an X-T2. However, in January, they really dropped to, on MPB, I saw some of them at 530, which at that point, they were cheaper than X-T2s. So that was really nice to see, and if the price point is similar and you can deal with the problems of size and you want image stabilization, the X-H1 is definitely a better pick than the X-T2. I would say that if there is an up cost, maybe not more than 100, 150-ish compared to an X-T2, considering that you're still gonna have to get the grip and stuff like that. So that's really something that is worth noting on the X-H1, is that the price is not always stable. It goes up and down, and if you see an X-H1, you want to get an X-H1, and it's around $800 for the body, I would suggest to wait until the price comes down, then buy it, and then watch it back up when people are realizing that the X-H1 is getting low in price. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to value, because there is cameras like the X-T3 that are around that price point as well. But I think that if you want specifically a camera that is a little bit bigger, that has better ergonomics, that has image stabilization, the X-T3 will not be able to provide you those things, because it's basically an X-T2 with a new sensor when it comes to the body design and stuff like that. So I think it's a pretty good camera overall. And when it comes to my opinion about it, I really think that I'm not going to need another camera in a few years now. Like, now that I have the X-T2 as my backup, my secondary camera for street photography and stuff like that and travel, and I have my X-H1 for my more serious stuff, like my landscape work, my event work and stuff like that, I don't have anything that I really don't like about those cameras. The biggest problem, I would say, is the lack of a good battery life, but I'm used to carrying a lot of batteries now, so that's just how it is. Alright, that's about all I wanted to say about the X-H1, I think. I think we've come through all of the main points that we need to talk about. I don't want this video to be too long, because I mean, in the end, when it comes to the performance of the camera, it's the exact same thing as the X-T2. It's pretty much the same camera, just bigger with IBIS. If you, in a nutshell, that's what the X-H1 is. All right, that's gonna be all. I wanted to take a little moment at the end of this video to thank you all, because I'm gonna try to publish that video on the 30th of April, and on the 30th of April 2022, that's when I published my first real video on this channel, and I really wanted to thank all of the people that have subscribed, that have commented, that have watched the videos this last year. That really meant a lot to me, and I don't know how to thank you except by saying thank you in a video like this. So alright, I'm not good for those things if you didn't catch it. Okay, so I think that's gonna be all for me. As usual, I'm gonna, present you like my favorite shots of the last 3 months that I did with the X-T2, and I'm gonna try to see you in the next video.